Hey everyone! So in today's video, we'll be redesigning a website, more specifically the Depeche Mode website. In case you don't know, Depeche Mode is a very popular band and it's my favorite. So a little backstory, a couple months ago they announced their new tour and I went on their website and to be honest, I was a little disappointed because I feel like they have such a strong style and that could be reflected better. So as we do the redesign, there are a couple of aspects that I want to focus on. One is aesthetics, the style. The second one is user experience. And the third one is accessibility. So I'm not an expert in the three of these areas, but I feel like I know a lot to at least give it a shot and see what we'll end with. And then if you are an expert and if you notice something that I'm doing wrong, please let me know. Yeah, so this is going to be our final product. So I was going more for like a magazine style feel, devoting a lot of the space to the photograph, which I think is absolutely amazing. And then moving the article over here on the right in this column style. And then having a section for all the tour dates and links to get tickets here at the bottom. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So to get started, the only thing that you really need is a code editor. And if you're using Chrome, there's this extension that I really like. It's called Live Editor for CSS, which pretty much just allows you to have like a little window open and make any code changes live and then kind of transport them to your actual editor, but we'll get more into that. So the only thing, just make sure you have a code editor. Mine is going to be Visual Studio Code, and then you'll be ready to get started. All right, so the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to create a folder where you'll want all of your code. So it could be really anywhere on your desktop, your documents, and you can call it whatever you want. I'll just do like DM redesign. And then what I'm gonna do, I'll just drop this folder inside Visual Studio. And currently, as you can see, there are no files in here. So what I'm going to do, our first file is just going to be our HTML file, the index. And then another one that we'll make is a style sheet. That's where all of our styles are going to live. Lastly, we're going to have some images here, such as this photo, this logo. I pretty much just copied this from the main website. And I'm actually going to go into one of my test folders for this tutorial, and I'm going to just move them over here. And I just have two images, the logo and this cover image. And another thing I have is a favicon, which is pretty much just going to be like a little red square. And that's this part here. So as you can see, there is nothing in here, but it's something that I want to make sure that every single one of my website has, because it just makes it easier to find the website when you have like 12 tabs open. So yeah, you can either get these images or some other images, but make sure that you have something. Let's review. We have our images, we have our index HTML file, and we have our style sheet. And now we're going to set up both of these files. We'll do our index HTML file first. That's where all of our content is gonna live. So you actually can just drag and drop and see what we currently have, which is nothing, which is expected. Anyways, so we're going to start by having an HTML tag, and then we'll have a head, and we'll have a body. And inside the head, there are going to be a couple of tags that are going to go in here. So the first one is the title. The title is something that appears at the top of the tab here, and now it just says index HTML, but we don't want that. So actually, what I'm gonna do, I do like this like nice lowercase clean depechemode.com. So I'm going to just have it here as well. And now, as you can see, if I refresh, it says depechemode.com. The next one is we want to have a meta tag so that our website appears properly on all devices. This one, I never remember it, so I'm just kind of copying it from my phone over here. Next thing that we want to do is link our style sheet, otherwise the styles will just not be shown. And our last one is going to be our favicon. this one should be. So now after I refresh this page, you can see that we have this little square instead of the globe. And yeah, we still haven't added anything to the page, so there's nothing here. The next thing that we're going to set up is our style sheet. And for our style sheet, we'll only need two things really. First is our typeface, and the second one is colors. So for the typeface, I went inside the actual website and looked at which one they used. And looks like they use Petit Sans Narrow. So we'll definitely use that one. But one thing about this narrow condensed typefaces is that they're not really good for article content. So they're something that you can use for headings, but then once you use them for main content, such as here, it could be harder to read because the letters are so narrow and so close together. So what we're actually going to do, we're going to keep the narrow typeface for the headings, but then we'll also use the regular Petit Sans for the article. And this typeface you can just get from Google Fonts. So I'm gonna find it here, and I'm going to just select all of these ones and then go to the narrow one, and I'll select this two, and from here I'm going to go to this import option here, and I'll copy and bring it over to our style sheet. And then the second thing is going to be our colors. So I'm just going to make a couple variables that we can reuse. And this one's I'm again gonna copy over from the test file. I have black here, which is not really black because pure black could be too harsh. Then I have a white, which is also not like super white. And then I have one gray color and a red color for accent links. If you're working on a bigger project, you need more colors, obviously. But here, just these four are sufficient enough. All right, now we're ready to actually add stuff to our page. And the first thing, we're going to return to our index file and open up this body. And we know that we want to have an image on the left and the article on the right. So essentially, there are going to be two elements inside our body. The first one is going to be our image, and the second one is going to be like our main part of the website. So for the image, we know we already have it. So it's going to be our cover photo. And then we can give it a class name of just cover photo. And then we want an alt text. Yeah, Martin and Dave. Then our second is the main here. And for now, we can just write like main content goes here, just as a placeholder. And now we can refresh. And as we can see, we have this huge image here, and then main content goes here. Now what I'm actually going to do is use this Magic CSS extension and start to add our styles here, like live in the browser, and then we'll copy them over to our editor. So we have body. What we want to do is have display flex. So now as you can see, we have image on the left, content on the right. And then we also want to set the font family to be Petit Sans, because now I think it's just the default browser. So font family. Okay, so now it's correct. And then from here, you see by default, there's like a tiny margin. So our image is not like flushed with the edges. So we're going to set margin to 0. And now we're going to do a couple things for the cover photo. So for the height, we want it to be 100% of like view height units. And then for the width, we want 49, so just view width. And as you can see, it got like a little too narrow because we don't have an object fit, which is cover. And now it's back to normal. So now what I'm going to do is just copy this stuff and put it inside our style sheet. And now we can start building out the structure for the right side of the page, which is our main content. So the first one is going to be our logo. Alt text would be logo. And then for the class, we'll give it also logo. And then our second, we're going to have a section. First section is going to be just the article. And then our second one is going to be the tour. And you can just write article, tour. And now refresh. Okay, so you can see the logo is super big. So what we're going to do is, don't need this stuff. We'll do image logo and just give it a width of maybe like 13 grams. Now that's 20. And then for our whole main section, we'll do display flex, flex direction column, and then we'll give it some padding, like 2 rems vertical, 1.5 horizontal, just so it's not like too close to the edge. And lastly, let's just take this stuff and put it inside our style sheet. Next, we're going to replace this article placeholder with the actual article. So first thing I'm gonna do, I'll just copy this title and I'll go to the HTML file, and this is going to be our main tag. It's a little long, so maybe there is a way to shorten it, but anyway, this is our main title of the page. And the second thing, I'm going to grab the content of this article and put each paragraph inside its own p tag. So now we can go back and refresh this, and we see we have our article here. So first, there are a couple things that we can do. The first one is for our headings, we wanted to use the condensed typeface. So what I'm gonna do is do the H1 and then do the font family PT Sans Narrow. So this one matches what's currently on the website. And then another thing that we want to do is to break this into columns. So it's a good idea to break your text into columns and maintain like a shorter width. It just makes it easier to read when you have text spanning across the entire page. And especially if it's something as big as an article, it just gets more strenuous on your eyes and on like the concentration level. So in addition to just the aesthetic purposes of having this magazine spread feel, we're also doing it for usability concerns. So what I'm gonna do is do the section article, and we're gonna do column width, and for this one we'll do 13. And then we also want to have column gap, I think maybe two rems. Another thing that we want to do is return to our title here, and it does have default margins, so we want no margins. And then we want to do the line height, maybe 1. And then for the rest of the text, we actually want it to be bigger, maybe 1.5. Again, so when you're dealing with blocks of text, it does help to have bigger line height. Again, it's easier to read, easier to find the second line. But then for the headings, sometimes you can see on the website because the font size is much bigger, the line height is also bigger, and sometimes like the lines feel disjointed, and it helps to condense them a little bit, and it usually does not impact readability. In fact, it helps it to feel more cohesive. Okay, so a couple of things that we can do here as well is, the first thing is we currently don't have any spacing between the logo and the article. So we're gonna go back to our main array here, and we're going to do a gap, maybe like 3 rems, maybe 2. And then we also want to align items to center. So now our logo is in the center here. And the last thing is let's just make sure that we have everything in the editor. So I'm gonna place this stuff into main and then to the section here, and the H1, just place it here. And you definitely don't need to have one style sheet. For this small project, we'll only have maybe around 200 lines of CSS code. So what I like to do is to add some sections inside the CSS file. But of course, once it starts to get larger, you can and you should break it into separate files. Here, what I'm gonna do, I'll have like a general section, which is kind of everything that's more or less universal, applies to the entire file. Then I could have like a small section. This is just like image stuff. And then we'll have this like main area. You can break it up any way you want. I just find that having some section helps me orient better, especially when I visit the file like multiple weeks or months later. So back to our page, there is one more important thing that we should do. So now when I scroll, the image scrolls together with the whole page, and we don't want it. We want the image to remain here always. So what I'm gonna do is we will modify our body to have overflow hidden. And now, as you can see, I can't scroll at all. This whole text is just not here. So what we're going to do is just for our main section here, we'll set overflow Y to scroll. And now you can see we can scroll, but the image always stays here on the left. And again, just make sure that whatever you do in your Magic CSS tool, you bring over to your actual editor. So we have that. And we have our main. So now let's look at how this behaves responsively. So let's turn on responsive mode. So as you can see, when I make this smaller, the moment the column width reaches 30 rems, it snaps to this one column layout and then keeps on going, which is what we want. So if we were to make the screen bigger, it would go up to like 3 columns. But one thing is that this is more or less sustainable up until you kind of get to this point, and then things start to not look as good. So what we're going to do is modify the layout a little bit once you reach this certain point when you want it to be something else. Here, maybe we want to change our layout once we reach around 800 pixels, which is like 50 rems. So what I'm going to do is at media, max width 50 rems. We want to modify this layout. So first what we could do is maybe want our body to be a flex directional column. And now we need to update our image. First we need to update our HTML overflow. We want overflow auto. So now we at least are able to scroll. And then for our cover photo, we want it to be width of all available space. And then we want to set the height to auto. And that should really be it. Let's take this and place it inside our CSS file. And now, as we make it bigger, we go back to our initial layout, and then the moment it reaches 800 pixels or 50 rems, it goes into this column layout. All right, so that's it for the first part of this video. So in this one, we just did the overall page layout, and then we did the article column layout and made sure that it looks fine on a phone. And in the second part of this video, we'll be adding the actual tour section with this like tickets things here. And one last important thing, I need to give credit where credit is due. So another backstory, right around when Depeche Mode announced their new tour and I saw the website, I also came across Jen Simmons' work and her examples of all the layouts. And that's why I think I especially felt like, oh, maybe there could be something more interesting done with the Depeche Mode website. So maybe that's why. But anyway, definitely check out your website and all of your layout examples. They're really fun to see and like definitely different from things that I've been used to. And this specific kind of magazine spread layout I got from this example here, which you can find on her page. So yeah, anyway, thank you for watching, and check out the second part if you want to learn how to do the grid for the tickets and the tour section.